Hey dads, welcome to Father Friend, a podcast for dads who want to lean in, lead well, and love big. I'm Dr. Mike Ayers. You know, I've always loved studying the Civil War. I'm fascinated by the courage it called out in everyday men and by President Lincoln's extraordinary leadership during the nation's darkest hour. But beyond Lincoln, the era is filled with powerful stories of leadership and sacrifice. One of my favorites is the account of Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. He was a Union officer leading a battalion of men just outside of Gettysburg on May 24, 1863. That day, 120 mutineers from the 2nd Maine Regiment were marched to Chamberlain at gunpoint. These men had served their enlistment, but weren't being allowed to go home. They were angry, exhausted, and done with the war. Many of their fellow soldiers had already died, and they had lost all trust in their leaders. To make matters worse, they hadn't eaten for days. When brought before Chamberlain, they shared their grievances. In their eyes, the war no longer seemed worth the cost. Chamberlain, himself a man from Maine, had two options. He could follow orders, force them to fight, and execute those who refused, or he could try to reason with them and call them to something greater. What follows here, what I'm about to read, are excerpts from the words he shared that day. He said, "I've been told that if you don't come, I can shoot you. Well, you know I won't do that. Not Maine men. Here's the situation. I've been ordered to take you along, and that's what I'm going to do, under guard if necessary. This regiment was formed last fall back in Maine. Some of us volunteered to fight for the Union. Some came because we were bored. Some came because we were ashamed not to. Many came because it was the right thing to do. This is a different kind of army. If you look at history, you'll see men fight for pay, for land, or because a king made them. But we're here for something new. We're an army going out to set men free. Here you can be something. What we're fighting for, in the end, is each other." Now let me ask you a question. What do you think those mutineers did? Well, they picked up their rifles and marched into the Battle of Gettysburg. In fact, they fought bravely in one of the most important and costly battles of the entire war. Why? Because someone reminded them what they were fighting for. You see, cause fuels courage, and that truth should stir the heart of every father today, because right now there's a battle raging in our culture, and it's aimed straight at our kids. Just turn on the TV, just watch social media. You'll see that the stakes couldn't be higher. Across the country, men are engaged in a war for the hearts, minds, and futures of their children. And make no mistake, the battlefield is brutal. Our sons and daughters are being bombarded with hypersexualized content, gender confusion, and cultural messages that challenge faith and God-given identity. Social media is shaping their self-worth. Screens are hijacking their attention. And a culture obsessed with self-expression is feeding them distorted views of what it means to be whole, loved, and free. Now is certainly not the time for passive men or disengaged dads. Our silence is not neutral, it's surrender. Let's say your 14-year-old daughter comes home from school upset. A classmate told her she might be trans because she likes sports and isn't into makeup. She's confused and asking hard questions. Now, in this moment, the cultural battle isn't theoretical anymore. It's in your living room. Your response in the next few minutes to her will either anchor her identity in truth or leave her drifting in cultural confusion. So this is what we're fighting for. The moment when your child needs a steady voice of truth in a world full of shifting messages. But here's what we must understand. This battle isn't primarily political. It's not just about what's being promoted in schools or shown on screens. It runs even deeper than the moral drift we see in our culture. People are not the enemy. The most dangerous enemy we face operates in the spiritual realm. The enemy of our souls isn't loud, he's subtle. His tactics aren't dramatic, they're slow, strategic, and easy to miss. He's working to undermine families by targeting the very men called to lead them. And sadly, it's working. Many dads find themselves swept up in cultural myths about what manhood and fatherhood should look like. Without realizing it, we can begin to believe lies about success, status, money, and identity that pull us away from what matters most. Almost every dad starts with good intentions. When their children are born, they promise themselves, just as I did, I'm going to give this child my very best. But over time, we lose sight of what my very best actually means. We pour ourselves into careers because we want our kids to have the best we can give them. The college fund, the nice car, the name brand clothes, the best schools and opportunities. We equate good fathering with good providing. Or maybe it's a calling that captures our hearts, ministry, nonprofit work, serving God, making a difference. We convince ourselves that this is being a great dad, that by modeling a life of service and sacrifice to others, we're doing right as a father. Well-intentioned men with sincere hearts, genuinely seeking to do what's right. But even when our motives come from a desire to do good or provide for our family, we begin to make trade-offs, spending less time with our kids, having fewer meaningful conversations, and avoiding the harder emotional work of fathering. It's a slow, quiet drift, not a rejection of our children, but a gradual loss of mission toward them. Not because we don't love our kids, but because we forget what we're fighting for. When men forget their why, they lose their will. The moment you lose sight of what you're fighting for, you'll lose heart. But when you remember the stakes, your child's heart, identity, and future, you'll find the strength you didn't know you had. This is why love and good intentions aren't enough. Simply saying that something matters or even feeling deeply about it isn't the same as showing up for it. One of the great deceptions of our modern age is mistaking emotion for action. We think that because we care, because we feel something, that we've done something, but we haven't. C.S. Lewis said it powerfully in the Screwtape Letters. He said, the more often he feels without acting, the less he will ever be able to act. And in the long run, the less he will be able to feel. Listen, when we constantly feel but rarely act, even our convictions begin to dull. And slowly, the gap between what we feel and what we do becomes the place where purpose goes to die. So how do you know what really matters to a man? By what he actually does and by the price he's willing to pay to live it out. Because sacrifice isn't letting go of something you don't care about. Sacrifice is giving up something you love for something you love more. In the 8th grade, my son Brandon decided to play football for his school team. His games were at 4 p.m., always making it difficult for me to get there, especially when games were at other schools far from home. I remember being in my office one afternoon, trying to finish work before leaving for his game at a remote location, some school far away. Now, I take pride in working hard and getting things done, so I convinced myself that the task I was working on couldn't wait. It could have. So I kept working, knowing I was cutting it close, but telling myself I had time. Finally, I rushed out of the office. By the time I got there, the game was nearly over. I had missed almost everything, including a touchdown he scored. Now, missing one game for a valid reason is one thing, but making a task that could have been put off more important than my son's game, that was different. And here's the kicker. After all these years, I don't remember the task that was so important that day, but I do remember missing his game. Those are the kinds of compromises that we make. And when we do it once, we begin to do it again and again until finally we've lost the years with our children that we need. Remember, cause fuels courage. And there's no cause more worthy of sacrifice than the hearts and futures of our children. So choosing to fight demands the will to act. That's the difference between a good father with a good heart who drifts and one who turns conviction into consistent action. Now, we've talked before on the Father Friend podcast, we've talked about the purpose of becoming a father friend. That's the calling. That's the big picture. That's the dream. And we can talk about that a lot. But hear me, because this is crucial. Big dreams without strategic actions are big flops. The question is, what will you do? Do you remember the days before GPS navigation on your phone? Well, if you don't, there was actually a time when people had to find their way to a destination through verbal directions and paper maps. There's one word I would use to describe it: inefficient. Now, I've never been really good with directions. Yes, I'm officially turning in my man card. I'd wander around in the car at that time, making countless wrong turns, and eventually pull over to call for directions from a payphone. Now, if you're young, Google it. There was no voice from a mobile device saying, in 1,000 feet, turn left. So just like driving someplace in the 90s, fatherhood can be an equally inefficient and frustrating journey without a roadmap to guide you toward your desired destination. Many dads desire to be their child's father friend. But listen, again, it's one thing to know where you want to go. It's another thing to know how to get there. And if we're calling ourselves to action, we must know how to get to the destination which we're seeking. That's why we must move from purpose to plan, from vision to strategic actions. Child psychologists, developmental theorists like Piaget and Erikson, and decades of research all agree, kids don't grow randomly. They move through predictable stages emotionally, mentally, socially, and spiritually, and they need different things from us at different times. Research backs up what we intuitively know. The quality of our relationship with our children during their formative years predicts everything from their mental health to their confidence in adulthood. In short, how you father today shapes who your child becomes tomorrow. That's why I've developed the father-friend model, a pathway, a framework by which to understand the actions and attitudes that we need in each phase of the fatherhood journey. And next week, I'm going to share with you the details of the father-friend model. Let me close with this quote. Remember, again, we're talking about the call to action. There's a relationship, there's a correlation between cause and courage. And dads, we need courage. Let me share with you a quote from Craig Lonsborough, who said this: "The call of fatherhood is in fact a call of sacrifice, not in some heroic sense where a father is lifted high on some glowing pedestal with all of his sacrifices held up to the awe of those around him. Rather, it is a call that will cost him all that he has, that will be absent of accolades, where rewards will be sparse, and where he will someday find himself having spent all, but in the spending have gained everything. And this is the glory of fatherhood." Dads, why do we fight? Because of the cause of our children. Don't lose hope. Don't give up. Don't stay neutral. Next week, we'll talk about how we fight, and I'll share with you the father-friend model. Thanks for listening today. I'm Dr. Mike Ayers. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with other dads. I'd love to hear from you. Email me at mikea@fatherfriend.net with comments, questions, and your biggest takeaways. For more tools, resources, and real talk on fatherhood, visit fatherfriend.net or follow on social media @ThinkingDads. See you next time.